Hey y'all, Steven here from the future, and I just wanted to give you a heads up that sadly the initial interview slash video recording I had with Eli, Dan, and Lewis didn't look too great. The audio and the video wasn't really syncing up so well, so I decided to do a bit of a workaround, but in doing so I kind of got rid of their faces for the entire time. So don't be too weirded out when you don't see anyone else talking except for me. Their audio is in here, it's super clean, and they had a lot of great things to talk about. So definitely listen, enjoy, and hopefully next time we won't have this problem. This interview slash podcasty type thing I'm doing now on the channel is something I want to continue to do, and this is the first one. Hopefully you guys enjoy, and if you do, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and let me know down below in the comments some other guests we can have on in the future. Right now I'm looking to interview pillars of the Digimon community, whether they're good players or content creators, and I want to interview other pillars from other communities that might be interested in learning Digimon, like really good Yu-Gi-Oh players, Magic players, Pokemon players. If you guys have anyone that you can think of that would enjoy being on this show, let me know down below in the comments and I'll see what I can do. With that said, one more time, I'm so sorry for this big mistake. I really wanted to get the entire proper interview style for this video, but hopefully my workaround will make this a pretty seamless and enjoyable experience for you. With that said, let's go ahead and hop into the talk. Now we're just gonna get into it. So before we do any proper intros, I just want to briefly explain what we are doing one last time to anyone just joining us. This is going to be a talk, an interview, a chat with some of the best players in the world, in my opinion, for the Digimon TCG upcoming Nationals format, which, if you guys do not know, is BT6 plus EX1. And we're going to talk about specifically, we're North American players, the North American Nationals. But this weekend is the European and I think Oceania Nationals that is going to be immediately impacted by what we're talking about in this video. So next week is US Nats. This week is other places Nats. And that's going to be probably more pertinent questions or more impacted people by what we have to say. Enough said. Now, into the actual intros. I have three people here, Dan, Eli, and Lewis. Let's start off with Lewis. Why don't you introduce yourself, where you play from, how long you've been playing Digimon, and some finishes slash records you're proud of for this game. Feel free to talk and rant about how awesome you are as well.
All right, well, hi, how are you guys doing? My name is Lewis. You guys might know me from Digimon, best from the Digi Showdown. I'm one of the Digi Showdown champions, so I'll be defending my title in the Digi Showdown, which will air hopefully soon enough, so be on the lookout for that. I've been playing Digimon since it came out. Honestly, since before it came out, I was practicing online, learning the game, because I absolutely love Digimon, and I've been playing card games pretty much all my life. If you guys don't know me from Digimon, you might know me from Shadowverse, where I'm one of the main commentators for the Shadowverse Open, which is the main Shadowverse tournament scene, and I've even commentated 2 World Championships, which is really exciting. I play in the Miami scene, so a lot of people, you hear talk about PPG as this cool online store and online tournaments. For me, PPG is my locals. That's where I go to play locals, and we have a bunch of great players. Team PPG is pretty strong, so I represent the Miami scene, and it's pretty exciting. I really like it there. So yeah, as for myself, I'm more of a player who I play for fun, and that's not to say that I'm not a competitive player or a great player. I have had good results in the online regionals. I've entered 3 of them and top 2 of them. Locally, I've done well in the PPG regionals. I win a bunch of the locals, so everybody would say over here that I'm one of the better players for sure. But I do play for fun. I play decks that I like because I like the cards. I don't play decks that I don't like because I don't like their cards. I wouldn't play Lore Knight because I don't like Lore Knight the Digimon, for example. And I play blue because I like Garurumons. So I'm one of those players who I play for fun, I play from the heart, and that's just my style.
Wonderful. Dan, feel free to do your intro next.
Sure. Hi everyone, my name is Dan Vang, part of Gaia Force Gaming. I've been playing Digimon since 1.0. What can I say? I really like playing the game. This is probably one of the funnest TCGs I've ever played ever. One of my favorite things about the game is this guy right here, the Imperial Dramon.
You will have your time. You will have your time to talk about him. Don't you worry.
Oh yeah, definitely. I've done a couple of regionals. I've topped and won a few, which is awesome. What I like people to know is that a lot of it is a lot of luck. I just want people to know that kind of attracts people of all settings, right? Whether it's casual or competitive for Digimon, and like Lewis was saying, it's people play what they like and they can still win with it too. That's that's pretty important.
And then Eli, feel free to finish us off, unless Dan wants to like brag about how many regionals he's won really quick. We all know how many it is. It's a bunch.
Man with multiple wins. So my name is Eli. Yeah, I'm from Limit Break. You guys may know me from the Digi Showdown. I also played in that alongside Steven. I've been playing card games for about, I want to say, almost 20 years now. So my first love of card games has been Yu-Gi-Oh, but then I transitioned to Digimon after I took a break from Yu-Gi-Oh, but I've been playing with other card games in between there, Magic, Pokemon, and such. I play in a lot of the high tier tournaments, so like regionals, Evo Cups, and the Premier events. I don't know how many tops I have right now.
Too many to count. That's how many, basically. If you forget how many you have too many. That's the way it works. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm loving the game, and yeah, I'm a fan of many decks in the game. I wouldn't say I'm true to one color, but I do like a plethora of decks. So yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, guys. That's awesome. And as some of them mentioned just now, you guys have played multiple different card games throughout your tenure as competitive TCG players. And I think that'll be really cool to see, like, how you think about the game depending on what other games you've played in the past. As someone who's played, like, over 11 games competitively, I can tell you that there are bits and pieces you can take from everything and apply to all the other games you play that'll either make you better or just a more well-rounded user in this space. So let's go ahead in that same order we just did answer the first question. And it's going to be super simple. The first thing I want to kind of help the viewers understand is sort of your mindset going into nationals if you are playing, / the kind of mindset you would want to have if you were playing. Basically, what has your testing preparation looked like local grinds, deck building, solitaire test hands? Did you wait for real cards, proxies, whole 9 yards? Talk about your personal experience for getting ready for this national event. Go ahead and start off, Lewis.
Okay, so for nationals, I don't want to put a lot of pressure on myself because this is going to be easily the hardest tournament that I've ever done. You know, you can't just enter nationals, you have to qualify. So we can assume that we're going to be against the best of the best, right? And again, I'm a player where I play for fun and I play from the heart. That's not to say that I don't play to win. Every tournament that I enter with the intent to win it. But I'm not going to like stress myself out over like testing like crazy or figuring out like what is the best thing for the meta or anything like that. I just literally I'm gonna pick what my heart tells me the day before. So I have a couple ideas. I have 2 or 3 decks that I'm bouncing between, and that day we'll just go with what I feel like or whenever I have to submit the deck list. For me, for practice, I have a training partner that I play with online, and they're great because like I like playing in the Digimon Discord, finding random webcam games, but the quality varies so much. Sometimes you have players where you can have amazing games and they're super chill and super cool. And then sometimes we have people where like they have bad quality or they get salty or like you just don't know what you find in there. So it's kind of hit or miss. So I have like one training partner that I play with. But my main practice comes from showing to my locals. I go to locals 3 times a week. PPG is the main one. And there's also this ore store called Nowhere. So I try to go early so that, the tournament starts at 6. I'll be there at like 4 so I can get a lot of practice in. And that's the main way that I practice.
1000%. We've all been there in like the random pickup webcam games and you get that like scratchy audio in your ears the whole time. You're like,
Yeah.
This is a nice enough guy. I want to test, but I'm having a headache right now. So yes, I can totally understand.
You know those people that like they open like the full Jesmon line and you beat him and then they'll be like, oh man, I bricked so hard that game. I'm like, come on, bro.
I've had my fair share of outbursts for losses, but usually I'm okay when it comes to bad luck. It's just when there are situations where I make a mistake, my personal self, I will beat myself up to no end. I am my own worst critic when it comes to like losing and it being my fault. And you can physically see it in my face how angry I am with myself. So I totally can get how someone is like that, but to like project it outwards versus inwards, I feel is it can be a little hinky sometimes to deal with. Great, Lewis. Dan, feel free to talk about your playtesting / like preparation next.
Yeah, like Lewis, I'm trying not to put any pressure on myself. The goal is to do the best I can, right? I have like a short-term goal and like the better goal, right? My short-term goal is like if I can get top 32, that'll be amazing, right? Anything after there is just a bonus, right? Because we know that we're gonna play the best of the best. Like people have to qualify for this. Every bracket will be stacked. Like who knows? Like fingers crossed I don't see like Lewis or Eli or you, Steven. Yeah, first round. You're like, but that could happen. It's crazy that the brackets will be stacked with really, really good players. My play testing has been just testing with people on my team and people from Digital Academy. Shout out to Izzy, Nobu, Moonrose, Tulpan, all those great guys out there. Just testing, trying to learn, trying to figure out what aggro-based deck I'm trying to take.
No matter what it is, it's gonna be smashing heads. I got you. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't able to get any like EX stuff for a while. I think I'll get some probably in the mail to finalize. I can actually not proxy everything, but for the time being, I was like proxying like Imperial EX cards, just trying to figure that out. I think it got confusing for some people because I was like, all right, this Dino V is actually the new Stingmon, okay? Like, just remember that.
Oh, you weren't even like printing stuff out. You just being like, yo, so yeah, this card is a
Yeah.
different card. I know it looks like a different card.
Yeah,
I love that. I love that. I used to take old bicycle playing card decks and write the names of Pokemon cards on them, and that'd be my proxies until I actually bought the cards. And I would like save up all my money from high school, like chores or odd jobs, and that's how I'd actually get the cards. So I know the proxy grind can be a challenge to some people.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Eli, feel free to go next.
And for me, going into nationals, I'm just gonna try my best, like I do in every tournament. I think that's probably the best anyone can do, is just literally try your best, and then with that, whatever outcome you get, just reflect on it and take it from there. I guess if you do well, just you do well, and if you do poorly, just reflect on that and see if things could do better. If you can do things better next time. But my goal is just to hopefully get top 32. If I don't, it is what it is. There's a lot of great people that are going to be there. As for play testing, I've been just playing around with my teammates in the Limit Break server, and I've also been playing in some Digimon tournaments, such as like some of the Gyroshan or GFG tournaments. Shout out to them. Really cool people. And yeah, that's mainly where I get all my play testing from. I sometimes hop in the Digimon Discord server when there isn't anyone around to play, and usually there's a ton of people on there. But it's like Lewis said, you never know what quality, like the quality of the match is going to be before you play. So
yeah, you never really want like your testing to be a gotcha game of like, will this be a good match that will teach me something, or will it be a bad match that I have to sit through and finish because I'm polite and I want to just finish this game? Always a tough call. And the thing I want to point out that I think a bunch of you guys said is setting low expectations for yourselves going into events like these, because it can be a lot of pressure. In the North American event alone, there's going to be 900 players that qualified for the tournament, which means they performed better than the average people within their local communities to get to where they're going to be in that event. And that can be daunting of like, if you want to do well, you have to meet that level and go beyond it. When that's not necessarily true. Doing well doesn't mean getting top 32s for some people. It just means having fun and playing your best, and whatever outcome happens, happens. I'm a big advocate of like, make the experience you play of playing a tournament or a TCG yours. Don't make it anything else. Don't put pressure on yourself that someone else is putting on themselves, right? That's not you. The way you want to do well is how you should do well, and nothing else. Great. Love that. For the second question, I want to touch more on decks, the top decks, the tiers, the ranks. Let's start off with Eli for this one. What are some of the top performing decks, in your opinion, for the upcoming EX1, or should I say, continuing EX1 format in Digimon? Right now, we're seeing a lot of Gabu Bond, Agu Bond, Jess, Security Control, and Purple decks coming out of nowhere. Do you agree with that list, or don't you?
I think you've got it spot on. I think we'll probably see Jessmon in abundance, Gabubond in abundance, and then you'll also be seeing Agubond creep up because they got a lot of support in EX1. And then I think Lilith Loop is probably one of those you have to watch out for as well. And probably maybe Diaboromon. Diaboromon could be a great deck depending on the build and the pilot. So I think we'll be seeing a lot of those decks at the top tables.
Great. And I know I'm going to let you talk about
Security
Lilith
Control as well.
Yes, of course. Security Control for sure. And I'm going to let people talk about certain decks in a second. And I want to ask you more about Lilith Loop, Eli, because I know you love messing around with that deck. Dan, feel free to go next.
Sure. I think what both you guys touched upon, definitely agree with those top decks. I think we'll see a little bit of maybe not the high tier 1 decks, but we will see some percentage of people just playing, decks that got some support from EX, such as, Imperial Dramon.
Some people, right? Some people, yeah. Some people will do that.
But I think we're going to see definitely touch of Rookie Rush still. Rookie Rush can still beat some decks, because some decks still look for pieces. And a more consistent Rookie Rush build, like Command Dramon, right? The D-Brigade deck is definitely a deck that can prove itself.
And D Brigade in particular actually got some like hidden support in the form of like the Cyborg stuff and Analog Youth. So there might be something there for like a new engine to approach that deck. Very interesting. Lewis, how about yourself?
I'm going to agree with most of what you guys said. It's definitely the top decks. I'm the person that's always looking at the things that's like right below that could still be good, that I would still be scared of if I played against in tournament. So for me, I've been testing a lot of Machine Dramon. I think the Machine Dramon deck is pretty sweet. It's a little bit underrated, I would say, and it's one of those things where like if you're not ready for it, it can surprise you, it'll slap you, and I think it's pretty good. So I would not be surprised to see Machine Dramon do, maybe not like win the tournament, but probably do okay there.
It'll show up for sure, and if it shows up, it has a chance to win. That's just like the basic fact. It's like it's not a weak deck. It's just dependent on how the pilot uses it, and then how many there actually end up being at the event. That'll ultimately determine how well it does, for sure. Love those thoughts. We kind of touched a little bit on EX1 cards, and I do want to approach that a bit more. Are there anything out of the latest set, EX1, that you actually think impact this format or are standalone performers? We'll go back to Lewis for this one. You mentioned Machine Dramon. If you want to touch a little bit more on like what you think that deck is good at doing in this format versus like what it's bad at doing, for example.
Well, it's kind of interesting because with Machine Dramon, I've seen it build different ways. And since it's like very, very new, there's like not one set correct way to build it, we could say. Like I've seen some people try to build it like a Mega Suit type thing where they're like trying to Kaiser nail that Machine Dramon. And like the ceiling of that is like insane, like very, very strong. But I, as a more like, we'll say consistent player, I'm like, man, I don't know if that's the way to do it. Because I like just maxing out on as many level 5 cyborgs as you can and cycling, getting consistent, because in my experience, the deck, once it gets going, it can like maintain its momentum by cycling through its deck. But sometimes it could be hard if you don't find those starting pieces and you're not able to start discarding. But I think what Machine Dramon does is it could set up a boss monster for relatively cheap. You're spending essentially 7 memory, but you get a really strong boss monster that could be really hard for a lot of decks to deal with. And you can definitely just win the game with like 1 or 2 well-placed Machine Dramons.
You mentioned a little bit there about level 5 cyborgs. I know that's a big point of contention for the Machine Dramon stands out there. I think the average is anywhere from 12 to 14. I myself personally love playing 14 because, like you said, maxing out on however many you feel comfortable playing is really important for the overall cycle and consistency of the deck. What is like your current preferred number if you have one right now?
I think currently I'm testing at like 13. Yeah. Just trying to get like a good amount of numbers. And I really like that some of the cyborgs, like a lot of them you just discard them because like, they're just there for the inheritable. But some of them are like pretty good cards. I really enjoyed the Mega Dramon, where you just on play, clear to rookies. And one of the MVPs for me has been the Metal Greymon, where one of the big problems for Machine Dramon is those memory stoppers, So being able to have like, I have a Guard Dramon, I go into Metal Greymon, swing, I kill your memory blocker, and like now it opens up my plays. So the Metal Greymon has been really, really good for me.
And Dan's going to get a kick out of this. I love playing Machine Dramon as like an aggro level 5 toolbox deck, and a card like that Metal Greymon or the Mega Dramon are just clutch. Like Mega Dramon's Mistymon, and the Metal Greymon just kills things when it swings. It's so much value. It's actually crazy. Great thoughts. If you have anything else that you want to say about EX1, Lewis?
Yeah, well, I just want to say, like, I definitely love swinging with 5s in that deck. Like, the Guard Dramon Inheritable is so insane. It's actually so good. Like, as soon as I get a level 5, I'm like, I'm swinging.
Yes.
I'm instantly swinging.
Yes, for sure.
But for the EX collection overall, I'd say the biggest card is the Analog Boy. And it's interesting to me because it's, like, super hyped up. There's a lot of decks that are just like, oh, we have our deck, we add an Analog Boy, call it a day, and now we're set for Nationals, But there's also a lot of players that are, like, kind of sleeping on it or maybe not thinking it's that good. And funny enough, in my experience, Analog Boy, it seems like it's, like, built for Machine Dramon. But the more I play with it, like, I actually kind of don't really like it that much. And it ends up not doing that much to me because everything else in the deck already cycles so well that it almost feels like I don't actually need it.
For me personally, I find Analog Youth as just a useful tool. I don't think it's a broken card that completely changes the way you can build your deck. I just think it's a nice addition in consistency for decks that were lacking something like that. Like, so for example, Diaboromon now has a way to search for Digimon that are white and black versus just hope that you get a white memory boost at some point to grab your Diaboromons. You know, that card doesn't exist. We have Analog Youth. That's a good use. And then there's funny combos with like the Bond of Friendship Garuru Bond decks that try to like still have a turn after they swing with their Gabu Bond and ice wall their opponent to ice wall them again. There's funny things happening with Lilith Loop, of course, being a nice way to get 10 cards in your trash very quickly. So I think Analog Youth being looked at more as a tool versus anything like game breaking is a very important thought to have. So for Dan, if you want to talk about any EX1 cards that you think stand out or decks that are kind of shining stars in your opinion that might actually be big that maybe not people are talking about or people are talking about, either way.
Yeah, I think you touched upon it. I think everyone can agree that Ice Wall is definitely one of those top cards that may or may not should have been printed, but it exists now, so we do have to deal with it, right? So I do think Ice Wall is one of those cards that can just help you win a game, you know. But it feels game breaking, right? If you play like 2 at once, right?
Yes.
When you play 2 at once, it's like, oh, your opponent has really one swing max usually. But I mean, if someone plays maybe 1, you know, maybe there's a I guess a way for the opponent to kind of feel like, okay, you know, I'm only under 1 Ice Wall, I'm only losing 2 memory as opposed to 4 memory. But I do feel like Ice Wall is not a balanced card, and I do think that makes a lot of blue decks really good. You know, you can run, you know, just shout out to Lewis. Obviously, I've seen your videos. I know Garurumon Tribal's a thing. You know, and, like it makes Garurumon Tribal like scary, right?
Anything blue's a thing. Hexablow is the other thing. We got funny things like Imperial, we're going to talk about probably later too. And then, like you said, Garurumon Tribal. And they have a new Garurumon now. That's actually kind of funny good.
Yes.
Yeah, that Garurumon is very, very good. I'm definitely testing that, you know, for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say Garurumon Tribal is actually, I think it's a sleeper. Like people, you know, like depend on the pilot, you know, but it definitely is good. They have a lot of tools to utilize, even if you want to utilize even the Analog Youth in that deck as well, you know.
For sure. And then Eli, feel free to talk about anything out of EX1 that you're like particularly looking at.
Yep. So, of course, they've mentioned Analog Youth and Ice Wall. Those are both powerhouses. I think the Analog Youth just adds consistency to decks that needed those consistent cards. Also, it's a white tamer for 2 memory, which is very strong in some decks that utilize white option cards. There's a couple powerful white option cards in this set. 60% win rate and the what's the 3-cost option that doesn't allow
emergency
your
program
opponent to activate
shutdown
spells? Yes, that card. Both of those are very strong, and I think those pair very well with the Analog Youth. There's also cards such as the Biomon for red, which is pretty good. And then there's just some unique cards overall in the set, like the Diaboromon card is pretty good. Allows you get level 6 blockers that are 3k, so Gabubon can't bounce those, which is pretty strong. I think there's a couple other cards in the set that I think are sleeper too. I like the Phoenix Mon, the one that has Sec +1 and allows you to draw 2 cards when you attack. That's pretty good over like a Savior Hook Mon sometimes. But of course, Jess is just infinitely better. But I think there's a lot of sleeper cards in the set.
For sure. Awesome. And then we're getting to a point of like talking about the decks that we're preferring and not preferring. Are there any decks in particular that for day 1 of the Nationals, whether they're this weekend or next weekend, that you think are going to be the most played, or for all my math friends out there, have like a 20% meta share or higher, which means out of all the decks, 20% of them are this deck? Eli, feel free to say what your top pick for that is.
I think Gabubon hands down is going to be the number 1 pick for Nationals, just because it's got access to probably the most broken card, Ice Wall, and it's got a lot of utilities. It can do a lot, and I just think Gabubon's probably going to either take it or just fill up like maybe 10, 15 of the top tables or top 32.
Awesome. Dan, how about you?
Sure. No surprise here that I think other than Gabubon's, Jesmon will definitely be played heavily at Nationals. Just, you know, the ability to, like, you know, I was saying, like, the ability of Savior Huck and Jesmon together with at minimum 1 Sistermon is ridiculous, right? You can go from no board to 3 maybe even 4 monsters on the field. It feels pretty oppressive at times.
And Lewis, how about you?
I think those two decks are the ones that are most likely to represent it. What I would say is that if it was a regular online regional, I would expect to see more Jesmon. But at this event specifically, where we have the best players in the world, I think they are more likely to bring in the Gabu, because I feel like Gabu has a lot more agency. And if you are a good player, you can take a Gabu deck further instead of just letting Jesmon drive the car.
But Lewis, what if you fight against 5 sec controls? Then Gabumon's the worst deck in the world, right? Oh my gosh, terrible.
I absolutely hate secure control. I'm sure a lot of people know that.
Yes.
And while it is a good deck, and I would never, deny that, I think that at a big event like this, it is not the pick. You're gonna get, too many draws, too many potential bad matchups, and I don't know if it's the way to go. I personally would never play that deck, and I'm not a player of that deck, but I know that, for example, this weekend we had a PP regional, we had like 50 players there, and we had like 6 secure control, and only one of them actually made the top 8, for example, while we had like 5 or 6 ones in the top 8.
Lewis mentioned something really interesting that I want to touch on, which is Nationals will be the first sanctioned Bandai 2-day event for Digimon. And I think that should actually change the way we as players approach an event like this. Because for me, personally, in like the webcam events or the Evo Cups or the regionals from past being 1-day events, the way that I would select a deck is different, and I want to kind of talk to you guys about that. So because this event is different than the other ones in the past and how it's formatted, how big it is, how long it is there like a difference in your mentality for actually picking a deck to play versus like say Evo Cup or online regionals? Lewis, can you speak to that a bit more?
Yeah, for me, I think the number one thing would be comfort. So, for example, like I just started playing Machine Demon and I'm testing it and it's going well. But at the end of the day, I might just go with one of my other decks that I'm just much more comfortable on. For example, I've been playing a ton of Mastamon since it came out in 1.5, and I've played every single iteration of it. So, like, I know that deck like the back of my hand. I know how to play in different matchups. And at the end of the day, I think I really value comfort in a tournament that's going to be super long, super stressful against the best players. Sometimes you just go with the comfort pick.
Would you say that because the real like value is in top 32 and not necessarily first place, that you feel less inclined to pick the best deck in the room and instead pick a deck that you think you could do well with and get that day 2 invite?
For me, it makes no difference because I'm just always going to go with my heart.
I see.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's not like a strategy of like, I'm going to pick this because I like it and because it's okay to pick that versus this because it's the best. You just like, that's how I always pick decks, so why would I change even if this event is different?
Right, exactly.
I get you.
Like, try and get the pressure off myself, and like, whether I'm trying to get top 32 or first, like, I enter a tournament with the intent to win.
Right.
And like, we'll just see how far I can make it.
But winning in an event like this might look different than winning an Evo Cup, for example, because in an Evo Cup, you have to go undefeated just to win. Like, that's it, done, Swiss. In this one, you just have to get top 8, and then the top 8 single elim happens, or in this case, I think it happens earlier at like top 64 or top 128, depending on the size. And then that's like your second event. Like, you're really playing 2 events instead of just one big one. And that can like change your mentality for sure. But great, Lewis. Happy to hear it. Dan, how about you? Is the way that you're picking your deck different for this event than maybe it has been in the past?
I would say a little bit, yes, but I mean, I typically play aggro-based decks anyway,
Right.
so I know I'm most likely not going to time. Someone's probably going to whoop me, or I'll whoop them for sure. Um, like Lewis said, yeah, I mean, you want to understand, like, some decks will go to time and will tie, and that can be long and stressful for someone. I'm not a Lilith Loop player, shout out to all the players who have the brain capacity for that. I do not, unfortunately. It's long and it takes a lot of mental capacity out of you, because let's be realistic, like, it is 2 events. Day 1 is probably what, 8, 9 rounds, and day 2 is going to be what, 5, 6 rounds, right, give or take. Right, that's a lot for anybody. At this point, I'm still, I'm just going with an aggro deck because, like, I feel comfortable with it and I know I can do it. And if I brick or if I don't do as well, maybe hopefully I can reflect upon that and see if there was something I could have done better.
How well suited do you think aggro is in this current format?
I think it's pretty good. I mean, for the most part, like we're looking at like Jesmon, Gabu bonds, either Rookie Rush, Ancient Garuru, just rushing a bond, Agu bond, right? Let's be realistic too about So before BT6, I was like, oh, 8K, like the promo security Greymon, right? I was like, oh, that card's not that good. And then like as the format goes on, I'm like, oh, 8K, 9K swinging is pretty busted. Like 8Mon, I was not a believer of 8K, 8Mon, and then I was like, okay, it's kind of good.
So like the threshold for powerful Digimon has lowered, but the ability of weaker Digimon to actually do damage has increased. And so those two things are like lining up right now in this format, and it's like really well suited to different styles of aggro than we're used to seeing. Instead of having like 18 rookies attack in the span of 3 turns, we're having one big Digimon swing on turn 2 for 4 damage. That is like what our aggro can look like nowadays. Or we'll see big OTK combos like Jessmon just win in a single turn because they're unstoppable, stuff like that. Awesome, good thing to point out. We'll talk more about like the trends of the format later. I just wanted to get your opinion on that right now. Eli, selecting a deck for Nationals, different, same, what is it?
So I'd say it's around the same lines as Lewis. Just play with whatever you are comfortable with, and that should probably yield the best results, I think. If the deck has yielded good results prior, I think you can expect to see good results in your future tournaments. I would just play with whatever you're comfortable with, honestly.
Okay, great, perfect. And I would tend to agree with y'all mostly, but you guys know me. I'm a big brain Brian. I overthink everything. And I love that in Nationals specifically, we have like this excuse to be like, I can take 1 or 2 bad matchups and still qualify for the second day of events and then get my second try at getting that top 3-2 spot. Because if that's all that matters to me, I can afford to make a better call, because if I'm playing Gabu Bond and I truly believe that my version of the deck, its only auto loss is to security control, I'll take that 9 times out of 10 and just go to the tournament the next day if I think it's the best deck. That's a mentality I used to have in Pokemon, but I couldn't really bring it into Digimon because all the Digimon events that I've played in have been one-day events that are just pure Swiss. So I need to go undefeated, play the best deck in the room the best way I can, no questions asked. And so like there's less room for me to feel comfortable about the decisions that I make. So I love making comfortable decisions, but in an environment where I feel like those decisions can thrive more than the optimal one. So I think that's like a really interesting take on how different this event is than the ones previous. Now, I want to get into specific decks. I want to talk to you guys about your favorites. I'm going to start again with Eli. And you and I have talked about security control. We've talked about purple. We've talked about a lot of fun stuff in the past. And I want to know, what is your like favorite deck to tinker with right now? Is it Lilith Loop? If so, why? Is it security control? If so, how dare you? What is it?
So it was security control, and then it kind of teetered off as much as I'd hate to say, because I love security control, but
Me too.
I just feel like in this format right now, the way it is with the bonds and the hybrids and Jesmon having access to Delicate Plan and other decks being able to make massive boards and you're not able to out them, I just think it's not in a great spot, just because it's just because of A, B, and C of what I just named. Also, Three Musketeers is really good against security control, so that's also another reason I have kind of stepped back away from the deck for this format. I've been mainly tinkering around with the Lilith the Loop. It's been a lot of fun. The Ginkaku Kinkaku package is really nice, and I think that the ceiling on Lilith Loop is even higher than before, just because you have access to cards that can help your deck be better in the early game, such as the Kinkaku Ginkaku package. You can remove those rookies early on. You have extra aggression in the later game, so you don't need to wait another turn to swing. You can usually just finish them the turn you go into Zwart. So I think that's probably maybe my deck I'm taking to Nationals.
maybe. No secrets, no leaks,
you
no
guys
leaks
will
today.
You guys will find out once Nationals comes around.
Wonderful. I do want to touch. I tested Lilith Loop yesterday, and I gotta say, in the matches I played against Gabu Bond, I didn't feel like I was playing a Lilith Loop deck. I felt like I was playing a champion rush deck with the most powerful champions in the game, because the Ginkaku package being able just to wreck any rookie based strategy is hilarious to me.
Yep.
And then of course, like you said, just going Zwart, call back 2 promotes, swing, you're great. Also, Lilith Loop has like a natural built-in way to play around Ice Wall, because it's like, how much memory do I need to attack this turn? Let me just get all that memory and then I'll swing. It's
Exactly.
actually hilarious. So yeah, I think Lilith Loop is better placed than Security Control right now, because like you said, it's too known, it's too hated. People are going to expect it and going to tech for it on the day. So it might not be the best call for this event, but maybe in later events when people are sleeping on it as actually a good deck.
Yep. Exactly. And a lot of the decks this format take turns to set up. Jessamon has to either play their Hookmons some turns and just pass turn, or Gobblebon's playing Tamers. And this allows your Lilith Loop to just set up. Before, in previous formats, some decks like Rookie Rush will just rush you down before you even got a chance to get to 10 cards in trash, or even got a chance to get up to Zwart. But now with the new package, the Kinkaku, and access to other cards, it's in a much better position.
It's funny. It's almost like, even though the format is more aggressive, we still have a ton of turns to actually get something going. We'll talk more about the trends and stuff, like how fast this game looks like to you guys later on as well. But thank you for touching on that right now. Dan. Okay, Dan. So how many tournaments do you think you've won with Imperial Dramon? How many?
Two big ones, I would say.
And then an infinite amount of little
one
ones.
Bandai regional. Maybe a decent amount of little ones, but yeah, I think a PPG regional and one Bandai regional with Imperial Dramon.
Wonderful. So you're also known for recently doing really well with Lord Nightmon and Jessmon in the more previous formats. Are any of those decks catching your eye right now for this Nationals format, or is there another deck that you're like, I'm considering this one and messing around with it the most?
Yeah, I think the top three really is just Jessmon, Gabubons, and Imperial. I like Lord Nightmon. I haven't messed around with it too much, but it also, the list doesn't change too much either, right? Unless you want to splash in some EX stuff and get, nice and cheesy with the new stuff. But even then, that requires a lot more setup, in my opinion.
And is there anything about EX1 Imperial that you're like really loving in the current state of the meta?
Yeah, I really like the champions. Just the new XVmon and the new Stingmon just give so much more utility. You just, you're able to give yourself piercing, you're able to give yourself jamming if you didn't already have jamming, and you can always swing with the XVmon from the EX collection with jamming. Like, you're really confident, right? Because you're like, okay, I most likely won't die, right? So it's nice to just have more utility in that aspect. But I still like the original package a little bit better. But the new package lets more lines of play and more ways to play.
Right,
as well.
You no longer need to jam Nidhoggmons in for no reason to have a mid-range strategy. You can just rest up and attack them now with your whole engine. Basically, is like you have more tools within the actual Imperial Dramon archetype that you don't need from other places.
Exactly. But props if anyone's running a Nidhogg still.
Yes, it's some people, I've seen people play the EX1 Dino Bee and play the Nidhogg, because I believe the Dino Bee can rest stuff and then you just go into Nidhogg after to like get rid of like 3 things. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Lewis, you mentioned Yellow Mastay, and that was a deck I wanted to talk to you about because I know it's a pet deck of yours, but also Dan mentioned earlier Garurumon Tribal. You have a whole mess of decks that I know you love to mess around with. Are there any right now that got improved from EX1 that you're really excited about and you're testing a lot, and how do you like them?
Yeah, so basically the 3 decks that I'm looking at right now for me for Nationals is the Machine Dramon, which I talked about, which I'm still unsure of. And then the other 2 are my comfort picks, which is basically Blue with Garurumon something, and Mastamon, which I've been playing, for a bunch. And funny enough, these decks don't actually change too much. We did talk about the Garurumon for Tribe, which I think is really good, because it's like a really good card in general, but one that the Gabu Bond deck can't take advantage of because they just don't go into 5s. But the Garurumons are actually super strong cards, especially, like Sagittarius swinging for AK with jamming. The Where that I play can swing restand, so you can, get that Garurumon proc and then still go back to standing so you don't get just swung over. And I still really, really enjoy BT1 Metal Garurumon. He's one of my favorites. And Bond as a level 7, like paying 3 for that and getting to keep it, it's really good too. So I do like the Tribe, and that's probably what I'm going to be testing the most. As for the Mastamon, there is one card that I'm testing right now that I don't know if it's crazy or if it's a genius idea, which is the new Leomon from the EX set.
Okay.
Because in my experience, Mastamon is a deck that is really flexible. Mastamon can kind of play whatever it needs to do in a specific matchup. You could be aggressive, you could be defensive, you can draw the game out. You can do whatever you want because there's so many different ways to play. And Mastamon as a card offers so much. So champion-wise, you have like your Mimicmon and your Gatomons and those type of things. But I feel like I have room in my champions. Like we're flexible. And the Leomon is kind of cool because it gives you another aspect of like a good security check that could change the game, especially against decks like Gabumon, where like the turn where they Gabumon and they go for game, they are going all in on you. And if they swing and that Leomon is check and it lets you recover one and they don't kill you, like I definitely win next turn.
Right.
So to me, it's a card that I'm testing, and it might seem like something small, but it could give me the edge, or make that matchup like a little bit more tolerable for me. And
It's basically
we're gonna see how he
it's
plays
basically
that.
like an in-engine holy wave for those that don't know what Leomon does.
Yes.
But it doesn't take up an option card slot. It's just a Digimon. And because you're a Mastamon deck, having just like generically okay champions is fine because you can recycle them if you really need to use their effects. And I believe his on-play effect, no, it's a security effect to gain the recovery. He doesn't
It's
get
just
played.
security. Yeah.
And then
Like I think of Mastamon kind of like a toolbox
Yes.
decks where like my rookies, I want a lot of different effects and then little, right? So like I want a Starman, I want Bushi, I want Pulseman and so on. And then I can kind of do the same for champions, right? Like as long as we have a blocker in the trash, like I'm good. As long as I have a Mimicmon and I Gatomon, like that's fine. I don't need to play 4 Mimicmon, I just need 1 Mimicmon in the trash. So there is room for me to have those tech choices, and the Leomon could be a spicy one.
For sure. One that I've been liking in my personal Mastamon list is Gazimon. Because, fun fact, you can play purple level 4s or lower with Mastamon, regardless of color. And right now, there is no memory stopper in yellow. And we all know effects like Lilith Loop or shenanigans with Hammer Spark are just annoying. And if you want to like stop Hammer Sparks or Ice Walls from the security from blinking your turn with all your attacks, because you are a multi-attack deck versus like a big attack deck, that could be a nice way just to guarantee game against blue strategies. For everyone out there that loves Mastamon. Great. Now, I will briefly talk about what deck I love the most right now. It is Bond of Friendship. I'm very basic, but I just love the interactions the deck has access to. Dan, I wanted to kind of talk to you about this, but I'll talk about it right now. I feel like any blue deck right now, I don't even care if you're Hexablaumon, you don't need defensive cards in your deck anymore. You have Ice Wall, and Ice Wall can just blink turns. If what you need is one more turn to survive and you have an Ice Wall in your hand, guess what? You earned yourself that one turn you needed. And that's so cool to me because it opens up deck building space for cards like Forbidden Trident or Absolute Blast or just really funny blue cards that can actually interact really well with your opponent's board. I think there's a ton of experimenting still to be done in Bond of Friendship, and if you have an idea, you can justify it now because of how consistent and actually defensive the deck inherently is. And also, you mentioned too, Lewis, that you can just evolve into Bond of Friendship and he'll just stay there with no drawbacks in like an actual blue deck. And so if what you care about is just getting him into play, you can just play him like a super cheap level 7, and you might have as many turns as you want to achieve that kind of strategy. So I think even within the more popular decks, the decks that everyone's talking about, there's tons of innovation to be done, even if you can't see it right away. Now, a thing I want to talk about briefly, we've mentioned it on and off again. I've gone about how crazy I love this, but there's a card being run around in Agumon decks that I want to get y'all's opinion on, and that card is Lightning Joust. Is Lightning Joust actually cracked, or is it all hype? Is it a lie? Is it a fake meme? Should you actually be playing 4 of it? Should you just play 1 of it for the jokes? Or is it just like not belong in Agumon? Let me know your thoughts, starting with Lewis.
I like the card. There's a couple Agumon players here in Miami. And I will just say, like, when they open the game with, the Agumon that gives you plus 2k, then the Greymon that gets the plus 1 check, and then they Lightning Jousted, and then there's a Demi-Meramon. I think he gets to, like, 9,000 or 10,000, whatever. And, like, that Greymon swings twice for 3 checks, he survives. Like sometimes that just ends the game. Like there's no coming back sometimes. So I do think it's a very strong card.
And like you said, he swings for like 9k, so he's probably living depending on what your deck is.
Yeah.
How about you, Dan? Is Lightning Joust good or is it fake?
I think Lightning Joust is great. 4 of, I don't know, maybe that might be a little too much space, but I think 2 to 3 of in most red decks that are aggro based, I think it's really good because the security effect is add to hand, right?
Nothing else.
So you're never really losing it either. So it's like, oh no, now they have the Joust. I have been on the receiving end of that Greymon Lightning Joust package before, and it hurt. I was like, ouch.
Like actually
so
in
I
real
definitely
life,
think
like
it's a
you
great
felt it,
card.
like, oh my shoulder hurts right now. Eli, how about you?
Exactly.
I think Lightning Joust is a good card. obviously it's mostly used right now in I guess probably Greymon, the Agumon deck,
Right.
but prior it was used mainly in Gabubond, which was very powerful, but I think most of them by now probably dropped that engine just because of Ice Wall and the other cards that came out in EX. But I think it is definitely a great card. Just like Lewis said, if you take 3 damage turn 1 and the Greymon survives, it's pretty much game over. Um, so yeah, I think it's a good card. And you can tech it in other decks too, such as like Yellow War Gray or like the Gabu Bond and pretty much any deck, honestly. If you want to splash in a little red package, it's kind of a neat card. But is it type though? I'm not sure. I've not tested the card too much myself besides in Yellow War Gray.
So there is some validity to how useful it is given why you're playing it, either to add aggression or, like Eli said, to be a tech card to help against security control or even more aggressive decks in Agubond or other red-based decks that can splash red very freely. That's really cool. I'm going to touch a bit more on tech cards later on, but I do want to get y'all's immediate opinions on like favorite tech cards and for what reason. Eli, is there any tech card that you've just been loving right now, no matter what the deck is? If you can find room for it, you'll try to find room for it.
I couldn't say right now as far as like one specific tech card because I'm mainly playing purple right now.
Right.
So, maybe I have to try out more of the emergency that emergency protocol card.
Program shutdown.
But program shutdown. But I'm not too certain of a card that's just a tech card that's just in a plethora of decks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Program Shutdown is a pretty hot one. I like it specifically for, believe it or not, Lilith Loop decks or security control decks. It's actually really funny against those strategies just to like blink an entire turn. And if you're a deck like Jessamon and you're like, okay, I have to attack with my Jessamon early, but I can end my turn by using Program Shutdown. Now you can't use any option cards to try to kill it. And I doubt you have a Digimon stronger than Jessamon. So best of luck to you. That's a really cool card in my opinion as well. Dan, how about you? Any one tech card you're just in love with?
I mean, I think program shutdown's pretty good. I haven't tested it too much myself. I haven't teched in any crazy cards because I'm mostly just running red or blue, right? But I do find it amazing that, you know, at the beginning of BT6 format, everyone's like, all right, red tie, delicate plan. We're just going to stick this in any deck and we're going to make it rock,
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I have any specific tech card. I just do want to bring up like that that emergency program shutdown situation with Jessamon kind of feels like how, you know, any blue deck really can just drop the ice wall, right? It's like, all right, you don't have many options now to kind of go over what my boss monster can do or what my next strategy is, right? It's like essentially nulling the turn, so it's going to pass at some
And not only
maybe one play.
Oh yeah, and not only in Jessamon can you null your opponent's turn, but when it comes back to you, you can just start your turn with a delicate plan now and go, now you can't stop me from killing you. So not only could you stop me from setting up, you can't stop me from killing you. So yeah, delicate plan and program shutdown do go hand in hand, and that's why it's really nice in a Jessamon deck. Lewis, how about you? Any tech card you're personally in love with?
One card that I absolutely love ever since it came out in BT4 is Mac Galgamon. I play a lot of blue, you know, because I like blue and that's where the Guru is. And I always found it to be a fantastic Digimon. Digiverse 2, you bounce a level 4 or 3. It's really good in blue. You know, it's a good way to answer the Gasimon, the Chumon, and so on. He's super cool. He's got sunglasses, so I appreciate that. And then he has a good inheritable, too, like plus 2k on blue. Like, that's hard to come by. And I really appreciate Mac Galgamon, so whenever I'm deck building blue, I'm like, can I fit in a Mac Galgamon?
It's actually, ironically, really good against other tech cards the decks are playing right now, like Mechanoriman, you know, just a solid blocker that can stop the aggro rookie decks like Agumon and stuff, because while Agumon can do a lot of plus security attack, it doesn't get piercings. You're just like, oh, an easy blocker that's always good that I can like specifically use for this deck is even better. But guess what? Galgamon gets rid of that. So tech card v tech card, he's winning every time. And I actually know that card very well too, because I played Blue Omni in set 4, and you would play that card, and having like a 17k Blue Omni is hilariously strong. So that was really cool. And yeah, like Mechanoriman, Joust, Delicate Plan, Red Tie, there's lots of fun things you can do, and with the inclusion of a card like Analog Youth we talked about earlier, more white cards like Win Rate versus Program Shutdown, that are just like generically strong can just be put into decks now if you really wanted to put them in there. So I really do like the overall variety of tech cards we have. It does feel like if you're worried about a particular deck, you can put answers into it for your deck if you're that worried. Now, another thing I kind of want to bring up with you guys is the trends of the Digimon TCG and what trends you're expecting for these upcoming nationals this weekend or next weekend. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. In the beginning of set 6, the rulers of the format were Bond, Jess, and Security Control. And because those decks had a ton of ways to remove cards, whether it was Jessmon's Sword of the Blades or Gaia Force or Rattlestar in blue decks, or just what Security Control is, people thought playing defensive Digimon was pointless. Let's just jam our deck full of powerful option cards that can save our butts, and that's our line of defense. Or we can just kill them first, and that's our line of defense. That was basically a lot of the mentality of people. And so blockers were coming out of the deck. Well, guess what? Decks like Agumon that can now play Lightning Joust thanks to the inclusion of the Gallantmon starter deck globally worldwide can go, oh, no blockers ever during the game? Cool, here's a Greymon that can swing for 4 damage on turn 2. Have fun, Chief. You know, that was the new renaissance of aggro. And now we're seeing people adapt to that and being like, okay, blockers are kind of needed again. We were silly. We're sorry. Mechanori-mons are going in Gabumon decks. Grizzlymons are coming back. Coelamons are coming in. We're seeing Jessmon play heavy, like 4 copies of Blanc now. They always should have been doing that, but now they're for sure doing that. And then, of course, all bunch of other stuff. So I want to talk to you guys about, like, is there going to be a trend we're going to notice in the format this week that'll carry over for the following weeks to come? Lewis, do you have any trends that you've been noticing that you think are interesting that might impact this format?
Yeah. So for me, I think the trend is the rise of Lilith Loop. So I have a good friend of mine, one of my training partners, his name is Fenton. He's a European player. He won the Old Fours with Lilith Loop, and then he went on to like top two regionals with it. And this is like, a while ago. So like I've known Lilith Loop was good for a long time. But like Yella was saying, with the addition of the BT6 cards, now Analog Boy, Lilith Loop is just such a strong deck. And in the hands of great players, which we will definitely see this weekend, it's a force to reckon with. I am super scared every time I queue up against this deck. And what I will say is that now that we know, like, the only card that's banned in this game is Mega Digimon Fusion. It's like Bandai telling everybody, like, hey, this is by far the most broken card in the game. And there is one deck, at least right now for us, that can abuse it the best, and that is Lilith, right? So I feel like with all those factors, Lilith Loop is going to gain popularity. It's a very strong deck, and that's kind of what I'm scared about.
Now, this talk isn't a ban list discussion, so I won't bring it up too much during the talk, but what Lewis just said is a direct result of the ban list happening. Is this trend is a result because Lilith Loop players think they won't be able to play the deck at their full power come February 25th, so now they're just jamming it right now, and if they like it, they're going to run it at the event. That's basically the moral of the story. It's good, we all know it's good, and it's not going to be any better for a while, so let's play it right now because we can, is I think what we're noticing, and that might actually have a big impact as to what people are playing this week and next weekend. So very, very good point, Lewis. Thank you. Dan, how about you?
Sure, I think the trend that, like Lewis was saying, is definitely Lilith Loop. A lot of people are trying to get that last hurrah, right? Trying to get their cards played. Same thing with blue. Aside from just Ice Wall being super consistent and a great card for blue decks, a lot of people are going to try to run the stuff that they know is like, well, I'm not going to be able to run the full set of this. I'm not going to be able to play this anymore. Let me try to do it now, especially if you know it's essentially tier 1 and competitive enough, right? Definitely combined with just seeing every and any blue deck coming out. I think that'll definitely be the trend of people being like, all right, we're just going to max out Ice Walls and we're just going to play them all. At some point, I think if your opponent flips over a blue egg, you got to be like, okay, they got to run at least like a couple Ice Walls here. So I always got to be aware of, like, security could be like, all Hammer Sparks or Ice Walls. Like, I got to be aware of that, right? So you may kind of think about, playing more memory blockers or just not swinging wildly, right? You're like, okay, maybe I should wait this out until I'm safe, something like that.
Dan, what's your ideal number of Ice Wall in Imperial? Because I'm personally struggling to find room for a full 4 in that deck. What has been your personal favorite number to rock with?
I think 3 is good if you want to get rid of, like, maybe, I don't ever want to get rid of a Tamer.
Never.
So 3 is the happy a happy medium right now. I want to run 4, right?
Right.
But what do I take out?
Exactly. Okay, cool. Just wanted to get that thought because I see people playing like 2 Iceful, and I'm like, there's no way that's right. What are you guys doing? Find room for 4. Come on, it's there. It's a good crud. Awesome. Eli, how about you? Any trends you're noticing right now that you think will impact this weekend and then the weeks to come?
Yep. So I think in this weekend coming up and the weekend to come, I think we're gonna see a lot of memory blockers being played. People are probably gonna start playing 2 or 3 just because of rise in popularity of Lilith Loop. You've got other decks that are out. Machine Dramon gets destroyed by memory blockers. You've got D Brigade, which gets destroyed by memory blockers. So I think those will be you'll see abundance of those. If deck can play it, I think they'll be playing a memory blocker. So I think that's probably going to be a trend that we see in the upcoming tournaments.
I played Lilith Loop yesterday, and I think I had to kill 4 Chumons total throughout that event, and it was annoying. It was very annoying. Awesome.
Yeah.
I do think memory blockers are a super solid card right now, and they're again why I love throwing Gazimon into a deck like Master. It's like I can play this because it works. Great. And then a thing I wanted to briefly touch on is the speed of the format. We said aggro works, like doing big damage fast is great. Setting up for a big OTK is great. Having 18 dudes that can swing 10 times like Bond of Friendship does is great. But is the format actually fast? Like, do games last 4 or 5 turns, or is it just like 3 turns and it's over? Or is it just play Gabubon and it's over? Eli, what are your thoughts on like how slow or fast this format is? Like, are decks that are very setup focused like Lilith Loop actually in a good position because they need time to set up, or are they actually not?
So I think decks that take time to set up are actually in a pretty decent position just because of the popularity of Gabubon and Agubon. Those decks need tamers to play their big power plays. If they don't draw those tamers early on, they're usually just digging for them. Um, Card like previous formats, the fast decks would be defined by Rookie Rush, where they would just play rookie turn 1 or 2 rookies turn 1 and then swing with that and then kill you by turn 3. So we're not really seeing that aggression this format. Usually you're dead by turn 6, I'd say 5 or 6. So I think this format definitely allows for decks to take their time and set up to their boss monster, I would say, boss Digimon.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I think what we were trying to touch on earlier with like aggro is rewarded in this format isn't that the format is an aggressive format. It's that it's really easy to be aggressive and not get punished. Back in the day, we used to have to worry about Omnimons just chilling in security, or regular 12,000 DP Digimon at like 7+ numbers chilling in security. So we just couldn't risk the 4 turns we spent getting a mega in play on that first swing until we were super confident in the amount of advantage we had. Now, card advantage matters a lot less, and what matters is how quickly you can get damage through. Because believe it or not, the faster you start attacking, the sooner the game is over, and believe it or not, your dudes are probably going to live because everything is super weak. Like in Agubon, you play a card that's a 2-drop 4,000 DP. That thing is always living. I've never seen one die when it swings.
Yep.
It is the most hilarious thing in the world. And then it's swinging next turn, potentially with a Lightning Joust attached to it for 2 damage instead of 1. So while the format is very conducive to aggressive plays, it's not fast because you can play removal, you can play blockers, and you'll get the turns you need to set up your game because Gabubon can't win in a single turn unless you're at 3 security already. And then they need a lot of stuff still. So as long as they don't have that stuff, you have time. And if you use that time correctly, you can set up wins with anything. Dan, how do you feel about like the speed of the format on what Eli and I have touched on?
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback on what both you guys said, I think the format feels faster, right? Because now people are doing chip damage faster, but they're not winning the game in that set amount of like 3 turns. It's just them trying to get advantage in tempo. The game just feels faster because the DP threshold, right, is lower, right?
Yes.
So card advantage, like you said, matters a lot, especially in this format because tempo can change really, really fast. It's like, oh, that 4K Agumon's going to swing into security. It's probably going to die. I'm good. And then you're like, oh, wait, it lived. Now I got to deal with that guy. Maybe something in the back. I think a lot of times now, too, especially for this format, everyone understands like the potential of each deck, right? So you know, like, oh, no, like on board it looks like 2 checks, but in theory it could be like 4 or 6 checks next turn, right? With like, a bunch of hybrids, lightning joust, things like that. So the format feels faster because the chip damage is happening, and then you realize the potential of what the deck can do, as opposed to like, oh, they're gonna set up, oh, like Lewis has his Garurumon in back. He needs to set up to like the level 5 or level 6, so I'm good, But like if you're facing like other decks that may potentially, just swing in for chip damage or just swarm the board, then you're like, oh no, like what do I do now, right? And just like what Lewis was touching upon before, like security Digimon, that changes the tempo of the game really fast. Cordramon, Geogreymon, your Geogreymon I feel like is probably one of the cards that just shifts tempo immediately, right? Your first Digimon died to Geogreymon, and then it kills the other one that was going to take a swing. Now you're like, oh no, like what just happened?
For sure. I actually think Geogreymon's one of the strongest cards to utilize in this game if your deck can, because it does both card advantage and pressure at the same time. And when you can take away your opponent's pressure while then pressuring them back even harder than you were before on your next turn, it's crazy. And like we said, he's 5,000 DP. He's probably living when he swings, so he'll do it again on the following turn. So security Digimon are super cool. And it's funny to think of them now as less of a tech and more as like just an option for building your deck, because there's so many that are actually good. Lewis, how about you? How do you feel about the speed of the game right now and how it like is conducive to what decks are good and what decks aren't good?
Well, first, let me just say that all my homies love Shademon.
Yes.
If I'm playing a black deck, Shademon is going in there. He's always got my back.
How about Nannymon?
No, I don't like him as much. I can't block.
You can't block. Right. Of course.
No, but I do agree with all of you guys. Like, although the game can be, it feels fast. I think the really only fast deck is the Agu deck, because that Greymon is out there swinging turn 2 or turn 1, as early as it can. But aside from that, all the other decks do need a lot of setup. The Gabumon, blue historically is like the faster deck, but like they're playing Gabus, but they're playing it for 3 play points. You're dropping this Dragomon to Surge, and then they have to usually set up dual tamers, right? Like you need to spend 4 memory on a database and then 3 memory in a mat. Before the Gabu has set up their mat, I often don't feel scared at all. And oftentimes you want to use the early game to chip at them, because like you're saying, like if I'm swinging with my champion at 6k or my ultimate at 7k, like it's going to survive more than likely, and then I can close the game out early on. But however, sometimes that can backfire, as if you're chipping at them early on, if you hit into a mat in security, it speeds them up by so much, and then you can get kind of punished. So, but it's the nature of the game, and sometimes that's just the risk you have to take.
Right. Aggro is not invincible. It's just less punished than it used to be, even though punishes still exist, and they're arguably scarier when they do happen.
Yeah.
And the thing I want to point out, too, is like you said, Lewis, Gabumon sometimes isn't scary if you understand how they have to set themselves up. A great example I have is yesterday I was playing Lilith Loop, and I saw my opponent have no Digimon in play. I was at 1 security, but he had two tamers. And I was like, okay, as long as I set up a way that I don't lose to double hybrid, there's no way this Gabumon player is beating me. So I will simply attack as much as I can with my dudes this turn. I dealt 4 damage in a single turn, 4 to 1, and then I ended my turn with a blocker on like a Mastodon plus Lilithmon turn. I didn't go to his word at all because I wanted to limit the amount of security they had. Memory they had. And then they went into 1 and 2 hybrids, but I had the blocker, so I didn't die, and then I just won the crackback. No matter how strong Bond of Friendship is, he didn't even show up because they didn't have anything in the raising and nothing in the battle area, and I found my opportunity to be aggressive with what I had been building up for the entire game versus what they were just like constantly sacrificing and being like, eventually I'll be set up, so it won't matter what I do. So I was able to capitalize on them choosing to be aggressive versus choosing to set up properly. Too many people bring up all their Gabus all the time. I'm a firm believer of when you have the Gabu you want in raising, you leave it there till it's time to win the game. All right, he's always safe there. That's my big motivation to all my Gabumon players out there. And we're coming up on the last couple of questions I have for y'all, and then we're gonna open it up to chat questions. I want to briefly, because there's so many I can't even count, touch on rogue decks that nobody is talking about when they probably should be. Decks that are actually strong, got improved by the new set, are well placed in the meta, and could do very well depending on the right circumstances. I'll start it off actually with one of my favorite decks of all time, Diaboromon. I think you should never sleep on what Diaboromon can do. I think it's actually well placed to counter some of the best decks, like, for example, Gabu Bond and Security Control. Obviously, like we said, Security Control is not looking great, but it's still looking good, and people will play it if they think it's a good deck. And Diaboromon stomps both of those because their blockers can't be stopped by Gabu Bond, and they can set up really well against decks. And if you think it's slow, like we've said, the format feels fast. That's because people can win quickly. It doesn't mean you have a fewer amount of turns to actually play. It just means that once they're starting to win, it's over. So I think Debarmon's well placed for that reason. It just gains too many resources to not look at and go, it can do something. Lewis, what's a favorite like rogue deck you're looking at that no one seems to be talking about?
I mean, I have to go back to it. For me, Mastermind is my girl.
Yes.
I feel like she's never really maybe been like, tier one, quote unquote. We've seen Mastermind be slotted in other decks, like we've seen Mastermind in Yellow Wargrey, in Lord Knight, when, they feel like the matchup or the meta calls for it. But I feel like Mastermind is such a powerful Digimon, and if you build your deck to make her as good as possible, if you give her the resources, she's 100% a boss monster. And I feel like I'm very confident with it. And again, it's very flexible because you could build it in so many different ways, and you can take the role that you need in the matchup. Like if you need to be aggressive, you can go Mastermind with Andromon under it, you trash security, swing, summon a Bushi, like you're doing crazy amounts of damage. But if you need to stall, you can, get your Lucamons, get your Patamons, get your Gatomons, and just heal, recover, set up blockers. So I don't know. I just really like Mastermind. I feel like people don't really consider it a deck, but it definitely is pretty solid. And like, I feel like any event that I go to with Mastermind, like I know that I'm a threat.
Mm-hmm. Is there an ideal partner you have for Mastermind? Who's the king to her queen?
So I've tested out a lot. Back in the day, I really liked the Yellow Wargrey, and then when Dynasmon came out, I was like, okay, let's go all in on the Dynasmon. And then the more I played him, the less I liked them. So what I'm currently doing now is I play one Dynasmon, one Yellow Wargrey, and what I will say is that people kind of forgot how oppressive Wargrey was, but like he is still such a badass Digimon, and he puts in so much work, being able to swing twice, clearing out blockers, and then there's still the Wargrey Angemon combo. So I still love the Wargrey.
A thing that I always love pointing out to people is one of the reasons why War Greymon players were so mad when in the games they were winning is that he would just die because he's just 11,000 DP against all these powerful 12 and 15s.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? He's not fighting those in this format. He can trade really well against Jessamon boards, Bond of Friendship boards, and attack twice. And when you can do that 2 turns in a row, that's 4 damage plus all the things you're calling. You can do a lot of damage very quickly. Another card I want to point out that I love playing in yellow right now is, of course, Sakuyamon. You hate it if you've seen it in security control decks, but if you're a yellow player, you love that it exists because it makes your deck still relevant against all these crazy OTK setup decks that just try to sit in the raising area and set up a big combo play. Nuh-uh, not today. Gotta work harder than that. Dan, how about you? Is there any rogue deck that you think people should talk about that aren't?
Would the group consider D-Brigade as a rogue deck?
I would consider it as a rogue deck in the sense that it is very powerful, but it's not popular. So yes.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, because I think in the hands of a good pilot, like D-Brigade is nasty.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're like, oh, I'll be okay, and then 2 turns later, you're like, I got 1 security, and there's like 4 guys on board, and I know he has Darkdramon in hand. Like, what do I do, right?
Not just 4 guys. Some of those guys can float if you get rid of them, so you can't even actually solve the answer by just killing all the cards sometimes.
Exactly. I think D-Brigade is something that should not be slept on, and I think just touching back upon, like, they run security Digimon, they run options, so you swinging sometimes changes the tempo of the game immediately.
Sure, thank you. And then another thing I want to point out too about D-Brigade is, once again, things like memory blockers being popular actually hinders that deck, even though it's not a tier 1 meta, it's the worst thing to play against ever. It still gets hurt by those particular tech cards. So in your testing, if you find that it's really good, now you have multiple reasons to validate a decision like playing a memory blocker where you otherwise wouldn't. So I think even though a deck isn't popular, doesn't mean you can't impact your matchup indirectly by playing a good card for something else. Eli, how about you? Anything rogue that you are particularly looking at that no one else seems to?
For rogue decks, I would definitely say D-Brigade is probably one of the top ones. People are, I guess, a lot of people don't really talk about Three Musketeers as much, but I think that's a very strong deck. And I know a lot of people think it's a strong deck, but I'm not sure about how many people are actually going to take it to the event.
That's a very, very good point.
Gabumon, Jessamon, those are just stronger decks. But yeah, I think Three Musketeers is probably one of the top decks, and if you see a good pilot piloting it, and if they've got a great build, it could be very scary. That's also probably one of my top contenders for Nats.
Interesting. And yeah, like you said, like a deck can be the most powerful deck in the world. The most powerful deck in this format probably exists, But if no one plays that deck, it's not winning nationals, and that's not what matters. What matters is what are people going to actually bring. And a deck like Three Musketeers, like you said, is strong. We know it's strong, but for some reason it's dying off in popularity. Maybe because the true Queen Lilithmon is back and better than ever, and people are like, why would I look at Bielstermon? Miss me with those eyes. What are you talking about? That's probably at fault there for the dying of popularity. But at the beginning, Three Musketeers were everywhere, I think, and so there was a reason for that, not just the obvious ones. So that's great.
Yeah, Analog Youth can also add to the Three Musketeers, which is super strong in that deck. So yeah, could be really good.
And also you have some of my favorite tools still, like Rebellamon. Like purple right now, I love Rebellamon as just a card just to throw on board sometimes and being like, now you have this to deal with. And that card can run that pretty well, and that deck can run that pretty well because it has the Deputymon and of course the Gundramons that just seem super seamless. Also a card that I particularly love is Beelzemon being thrown in there because you have all the Impmons, and Beelzemon's just a good card. So why not throw it in there when you can? So great options. Diaboromon, Yellow Maste, D Brigade, Three Musketeers. This format is a lot wider than people give it credit for, and all these decks are either improved by EX1 or still solid and can do very well depending on how well you play with them and how your matchups go. And as we said earlier too, for nationals, like having the perfect deck is less important, and being comfortable with your deck is way more important. And if these are decks you are comfortable with, they are valid options, and you should consider them as such. Okay, that's all the big questions I have for y'all. I want to open it up to chat now about some easy questions we can throw out to maybe individuals or the entire group, myself included. If you guys want to ask me a question, I guess you can. And then I do have one final question that we will end off the entire talk with. Now is the time, guys. Give me your thoughts. One Forbidden Trident and Gabu Bond. Not anymore. You don't need it, I don't think, because you have a heavy count of Kendo to deal with the actual utility that Forbidden Trident provides, and as long as you play a heavy amount of power gainers like Demi V or starter deck Gabu, you're going to hit the number you need to against Mirror Match and Agubond. You guys' thoughts on Forbidden Trident?
Forbidden Trident, I just think I think what you said, Kendo does the same thing without wasting an option spot.
And then I originally played 2 because at the time I thought it to be the best answer to security control because it was the only way I could naturally find to play around one of the option cards they play at 4, which was Wyvern's Breath. You can make your dude 16k so he lives and gets that second check in, which you might need. But a thing like Ultimate Flare or Iron Fisted, you just can't stop those in Engine, so why play anything else? But then of course the red package came about. My personal favorite tech right now to include in Gabubon that's kind of off is Mechanorimon, because like I said, I want to play blockers, but I want to play the best blockers. So yeah. Let's see.
Yep. I feel like for blue, the new Ikakumon is absolutely insane. He's bonkers.
Oh, dude.
And the Zudomon is really good.
The Zudomon's hilarious. Playing those in Hexablow, I think, is actually so good because you can just play like a champion to ultimate beatdown deck that actually controls board, and then you just go into Hexablow, and so now anything they hard play can't hit you anyway, and then you just do Hexablow shenanigans because there's no good removal for a thing like Hexablow unless you can attack over it. Let's see. Where'd all the Black Royal Knights go? What happened to Black Royal Knights? I feel like it did go away.
Man,
yeah.
I don't know.
I think
I played that deck in the Digit Showdown and I did well with it, and I was super excited. And then the format came out, and I don't know, I just never found that success with it for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
But it was cool while it lasted, I guess. And at least we know Alphamon will get endless support in the future. So there's always that.
More and more. Just when you think it's over, it's another set of Alphamon love. So if right now isn't the time for Black Royal Knights, trust me, their time will come. I'm just trying to look for a good question for everyone. Why do you think Bandai hates green? Yo, that's a real question, bro. Let's see. I want your guys' opinions. People want BT7 stuff. I'm like, guys, BT7 doesn't matter yet. What are you talking about? We'll talk about BT7 when it matters. Does it bother you guys going to nationals when you play test against a player who picks a deck not meta when you want to be practicing? I guess this kind of goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, where we do have ideal circumstances that we're looking for when it comes to testing. I would say that's testing against the best decks, testing in an actual tournament scenario like a locals or a big like box event or case event you can find in your local area. But to say that you'd be angry that someone played something off meta, I feel like that's not a reaction I would have, because just playing the game makes me better, I feel. So it wouldn't matter to me, and maybe they could show me a situation that I'm not maybe used to seeing, and that would force me to think, versus just like go on instinct. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I wouldn't ever get like mad at somebody for playing what they want to play because I play wacky decks all the time.
Right.
I think a lot of it is about your expectations. Like if I'm going in the Digimon Discord, I don't expect anything. People can play whatever the hell they want. If I'm playing with my online trading partners, like I might be like, hey, I need help with X matchup. Or at my locals where everybody's like, hey, we're trying to practice for nationals. Like everybody knows that we're trying to play quote unquote more serious decks, right?
Exactly.
So as long as you have your expectations set, I think there's no problem there.
Okay. How about you, Eli?
I also think it's fine playing against random decks every now and then. You never know when you're going to come up against a rogue deck. Even though it's nationals, you may see some of those rogue decks at nationals. So cards you may have not seen before in certain decks, you may see them in those rogue decks. Can also just allow you to explore your deck and what interactions you have with their deck. And I never think it's a bad thing playing against a rogue deck. For the most part, when I play, I always think of like the most optimal situations and try to see what plays I can make. And usually, drawing random, you can do that with solitaire too. But when you're playing against a rogue deck or something that's maybe not tier one, you can just always just practice with your own deck, get a better feel of how your deck plays. So it's not always about playing against the meta, but I think it's always being comfortable with your deck, especially with a deck with like Lilith Loop, when you've got to make a lot of micro decisions that interact like the outcome of the game. So,
How about you, Dan? Any opinions on like ideal like decks to test against, or does it matter? Does it not matter?
I mean, like, backing off everyone says, I'm not gonna judge someone for just oh, you want to play, your Archangel, full yellow deck, right? Because hey, you could pop off and get like some crazy, combo off, But at some point, it's like, oh, I'm testing for Nats. Do you have like a tier one
Mhm.
deck? You at the the next match after this match is over, can we do that?
Mhm.
Kind of going from that aspect. But yeah, if I'm going into a random Discord just asking for a game, right? I did that to myself because I already went
Right.
to
Like you knew what you were
Discord
signing up
asking
for.
for a game.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you're going to a random Discord and you're looking for a game, you could be like, in parentheses like Nats testing or looking to, face like, the meta deck, something like that. Not just like I'm looking for a game. Like someone's like, oh, me too. I'm looking for a casual game, right? That's what someone else could read that as.
Oh, this is a good one. What deck are I'll reword this. What deck do you feel the least prepared for? Like if you fought against this tomorrow, you'd be like, oh, man, I knew I should have tested this more. Dang it. Eli, I'll start with you on this one.
I probably want to test more against Diaboromon because I have not done too much testing. So, if anybody out there's got Diaboromon that wants to test, let me know because definitely need to test against that deck.
For sure. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, that's tough. I think just some wacky, black blocker Royal Knight deck maybe that I might encounter and be like, well, I don't have judgment. What do I do if you slap down two Craniumons or making something? It actually happened, I think, one of the regionals. I forgot which deck I was playing, but I blinked and somehow the dude had two Alter S's and they both had blocker and he had like a black tie on the board and I was like, oh no, we're going to time for
Jesus.
sure, or he's gonna win. I think he won game one because there was no way I was getting around that.
Dude, yesterday I was playing Lilith Loop and I fought against a black blocker deck. He had Mechanorimon, Double Tie, Blanc, and Craniumon in play, and I'm like, I need all my ultimates to be on board right now so I could attack. Like literally it became just instead of getting my promotes, I was just calling out every ultimate in my trash and being like swing, 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 swing. I had to go for double MDF to make sure I didn't deck out 2 turns in a row and do back-to-back Zwart turns, and that's how I ended up winning. But it was the most challenging thing to figure out in the moment. But I got there. I was my heart was racing for sure. How about you, Lewis? Any deck you feel like least prepared for / like I don't scared to play against? We'll say scared.
I mean, the deck that I'm most scared to fight against is 100% Lilith, and it's not even close. These past 2 weeks, I've gotten clapped by it way too many times in locals, and it's not that I don't feel like prepared for it. It's just like sometimes it's one of those forces that you can't stop. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna play all my Chumons, and then like they help, but like it's just tough sometimes. So for me, I'd say Lilith is very very scary right now.
I said before, I'll say it again. If the right circumstances happen for Lilith Loop, they have the highest power ceiling of any deck. Like Gabubon
Yes.
can attack 4 times in a turn, and I'm like, oh, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool. I can play 10 cards with starting my turn at 2 memory. So yeah, Lilith Loop is one of those
Yep.
decks that just like you need to it matters a little bit less like how you understand what that deck does, and more like, okay, next turn it's over, so we need to figure out stuff before that happens, and then buying time at that point. That can feel very daunting because it is a very challenging deck to understand, not only as the player playing it, but the person playing against it. All right, let's find one more good one from chat here. Everyone's asking about like specific cards in decks, and I'm like, I guess that doesn't touch like play the Vidramon from
Maybe
BT1.
chat.
Like I play the Vidramon in BT1 because it's hot fire, and you should always play it. But that's just obvious. I don't know why you're asking. What's your favorite deck? I think we touched on that earlier throughout this. Favorite alt art card? Yeah, sure. Let's get some personality in there. What's y'all's favorite alternate art? I'll start. Well, now that he's been officially announced, the new /Andromon is Husbando. I have a PO box. Send them to me. I want every single one that exists, no exceptions, for free, by the way, because they're mine. I don't know why Bandai's giving them to you. They're mine. But before that, I've always been fond of Arata Sonata. I don't know what it is, but a simple just let's make a clean looking card that's better than its original. I just love that. And I love the black. Everything on my desk is blacked. I love just the murdered out look, and he feels like a murdered out alternate art. That's why I like him. Lewis, how about you? Favorite alt art?
So my favorite Digimon of all time is Garurumon, and I absolutely love the Garurumon line. So my favorite alt art is the promo Garurumon that you got in the regionals, the one that can swing and unsuspend if you have Garurumon under it.
Oh.
Because I think it's like an amazing Digimon, because people always compare him to the one in the starter deck where it's like, if they have got no sources, get security +1. But I like this one better because you control if you have 8 cards in hand. And then on top of that, like he has his own effect. So I just think he's better, and I love him as a card, and the alt art is fantastic.
Also, doesn't the Garurumon from set 5 give him like plus 2,000 power or something? So like he's like an AK swinging twice?
Yeah, I mean with the Sunamon, Gabumon, Garurumon, you can get him to AK if you want.
Easy, and he's swinging twice as an ultimate, and then you can turn into the new Garurumon that gets rid of any on deletion effect stuff. So that's pretty funny. Or it could evolve for free depending on the right situation. Cool. Dan, how about you? Favorite alt art?
That's tough. I really like the Bond of Friendship alt art a lot. I don't know what it is.
The glow
I
up,
still
that's what
haven't
it
even
is.
watched it. Yeah, I still haven't watched the movie. You know, nobody get mad at me for that. But like, I think one time, like when I pulled the card, I looked at it and I was like, oh, there's a Gabumon on like inside of this dude,
It's
and
like
I
a
was like,
spirit.
I never noticed that. But the real favorite is this guy, the alt art Vmon.
That is a nice artwork. Yeah.
I think, for anyone, just nostalgia at the end of the day, right? If you watch season 2, even if you're competitive, this guy's always viable at some point, right?
That is the strongest rookie in the game.
Like
That is the strongest rookie in the game. No one could tell me different. That is the strongest rookie in the game, and it's so simple.
Mm-hmm.
Eli, how about you? Favorite alt art?
I'd say my favorite alt art's probably War Greymon, because it's probably my favorite Digimon, I'd say.
Which one? Yellow, red, which one?
The red one from the starter deck. So the
the one with like him like thrusting out his pelvis really bad.
One.
Yeah, the prize card one.
Yeah.
Like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that one's probably my favorite alt art card, I'd say. That, and then probably Zwart in a close second. The Kenji art for Zwart.
Mhm.
I think that's very nice.
That's the like profile one, not the one with the cannon facing us, right?
Correct.
Perfect.
It's like a black and white kind of artwork. Same with the Chaos Gauntlet, has the same artist. So those are all both sick cards, I think.
Yeah, agreed. I always love thinking about the alternate arts in Digimon because we love the regular art for Digimon, but I'm like, well, hold on, how do they go above that then for the alternate arts to become even better? Quick poll here. Do we simple yes or no will suffice? Do we like themed alternate arts, like for example, set 2 Ultimate Power or set 3 Unit Impact? Ceresmon Lilith or Diaboromon, Piedmon, those kind of things? Or do we like just unique arts? Just all the cards have no theme other than their alt arts of this version. Eli, yes or no? Which one's better?
I honestly have no preference to any of the alt arts from the first few sets where they have a certain theme. I do like the alt arts that they've been coming up with in the new sets where everything is pretty much different. Yeah, I've been liking the textures on the card too.
Yeah.
So it's very nice how they've upped their game as far as like quality of cards, because they're pretty much up there with Pokemon right now, I'd say. Which is, yeah.
Dan, how about you? Do you prefer the themes or just the unique arts?
actually do like the themes. You know, like, I mean, I'm just biased, right? Like the Vmon, it has like the lore and like all the guys from season 2 on it and stuff. I do like the themes. What I do still like is if and I can still make some connecting alt arts. You
Yeah.
know, those are always fire, right? Like, especially to some newer players who maybe like pull an alt art and then like maybe one day they're like, oh wait, this is like a picture. Like, you know, that's always like a nice feeling. And especially even if like, you know, all of us know ahead of time, like what if we actually get one of each card, you know, that connects the picture? That feels so good like in real life to do, right? That just feels has a like a good warm feeling, I should say.
Yeah, for sure. I like that. And I do consider like those connecting cards a type of theme. It's more of like a subset depending on like which cards get them and which cards don't. For example, Battle of Omni, you could say, is actually a themed alternate art set because all the cards that are really important are thematically alternate art, and the ones that aren't. It's like a mixture of the two. Lewis, how about you? Preference on alternate art types?
I mean, I like the unique ones, but I'll just say that the art in the game is fantastic in general. So I'm pretty happy either way, and I absolutely love what they've done with it. So I'm glad that we have so many alt arts, and I'm all about that.
Yeah, here's what I say, and I think this is the consensus of us: is Bandai, you're doing a great job. Keep doing that great job. But if you have an idea that you're like, we think this would look cool, we trust you. Make it happen. Let's see the idea. I would love a theme, but it doesn't need to be. They're great either way. All right, that is enough personnel.
I'm also-
go ahead.
Oh, I also wanted to say I'm also a fan of the old school alt arts. So the Metal Greymon from BT1, that was probably one of my favorite alt arts because nothing else was like that. And then the Omnimon Antibody from BT5 is 5, I think. Yeah, those throwback alt arts are really nice, I think.
And what's really cool about that War Greymon one you mentioned is there's actually like a hidden reference to the show, which they do all the time, or like the franchise, where that medal he's holding, that's coming from a Machine Dramon that he brutally murdered because he did in the anime very badly.
Oh, I'm talking about the Metal Greymon.
Oh, the Metal Greymon. You mean the secret
yeah,
rare virus
the blue
Metal
border.
Greymon? Yes. So like,
Yeah, the
more
virus
like
one.
the EX1 style, but in older sets.
Yes.
Like they made a whole set devoted to it. Yes, that's a theme as well. I would say yes. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you were trying to get on like the hidden messages they put in arts sometimes. I thought you were touching on that. Okay. All right, and now the final question. This is the last question I'm going to ask you guys before we do shout outs and you guys can leave. If Nationals was tomorrow, the one you were playing in was tomorrow, and you wanted to guarantee that top 32 spot for that invitation to Worlds, what one deck would you take? I'll give it over to Lewis.
I think if I was like super most tryhard I could be, and I just want to like guarantee it, I think the pick is still Gabu Bond. Although I think Lilith is like insanely strong. You as a player could misplay or not play Lilith to its optimal and cost you some games. While if you're a player that's good enough to qualify to nationals, and you're confident with Gabu Bond, like I think that's the deck to beat, and that's the deck that would get you there, most likely.
Dan, how about you? If it was tomorrow, what one deck would you take?
I think Gabubon's honestly just hands down. It's just so busted sometimes. But like I was saying, you know, you need the mat. But if you can find even just one mat, like you're like, I'm good to go. I've got ice walls for days, right? I think Gabubon definitely the deck to at least get to top 32, right? To get to day 2 at least.
We're not saying the deck you think is going to win. We're just saying the deck that you would take tomorrow because you're so confident you're going to do well with it.
Yeah. Definitely Gabubon's.
Eli, no more testing. Whatever your thoughts are right now, tomorrow, this is the deck. What is it?
No more testing. I would just take Lilith Loop, but if I was to just go try hard and want to get top 32, I'd just take Gabu Bond. Easy, no question.
And just to appease every single person that's hating on me right now, I'll take Eosmon tomorrow just to have fun. All right. Let's go ahead and do a round of shout outs and then I'll let you guys go. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with y'all about the Nationals format, not just for the NA Nationals that I believe we are all playing in, but also for the European and Oceania ones that are happening this weekend. Hopefully the things we had to say helped you out. Hopefully you are more guided in how you should test/prepare for the event. Eli, over to you, bro. Say your goodbyes. Thanks
for having me on the stream, Steven. It was a pleasure. If anybody wants to go ahead and follow me on Twitch, my username is YRG_. Also post videos on YouTube at the Limit Break channel if you guys are familiar with that. And I'll be streaming every now and then on Twitch, so just feel free to follow me then.
Awesome. Thank you. Dan, how about you?
Sure. Thanks for inviting me for this honor to just be among the panel of like really good players and really great insight. Thanks to the chat for asking some nice questions. Shout out to Guy Force Gaming, my day ones. Just helping me become just better and just their friendship. Honestly, shout out bond of friendship, right?
Exactly. Our friendship is apparent in Digimon for sure. How about you, Lewis?
Well, I just want to give a big shout out to the Miami community. We have probably one of the best communities in the world, I would assume. The PBG as a store, as a locals force, is fantastic, as is Nowhere. So shout outs to all those guys. I've been playing with them for over a year at this point, and it's just been awesome. So thank you guys for that. If you guys like me or you like what I do, I currently taking a mental health break from streaming, but you can follow me on Twitch, and I'm over on Twitter as well, and I also do have a Discord. So it's all just at whatever / lose the panda. So definitely check me out, and thanks for having me, Steven.
Awesome. And then any links that they have talked about or things that you guys can find them in will be linked down below in the description of the video. And of course, what they just said for all the people watching the stream. I want to thank you one last time for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure. Hopefully we can talk more about the future of this game in future talks. And overall, I am very hopeful because right now the game feels like a good place where what you want to do in this game, you can do if you put in the work to do so. Whether or not something's actually unquestionably the best is really determined by what wins and not necessarily what we think is the best, which I like. It means there's room for us to innovate, become better, and strive to do what we can do, and hopefully it's enough. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed everything we talked about. Always be sure to work hard, rest easy, and live well, and we will see you all next time. Peace.